Hi guys, so I'm pretty sure I have started this vlog, like I feel it in my bones that I have already done a sit down section, but I cannot be 100% sure. But I thought what I would do, regardless of if I'm sure or not, is get on here and talk about books. I have to keep going because I'm so tired at the moment that if I don't just keep doing things, I will end up staying at home and I need to go out for dance practice, so that's not an option. So I talked to you about a book that I finished reading yesterday or the day before. And this is a romance novel set in Scotland. This is actually written by one of my neighbours, and that's the only reason I read it, because it was like 2 years ago that I read one of the romances by like Ali Hazelwood, the very popular romance writer, and I remember reading the book thinking, nah, I can't be reading this. And romance in general isn't a genre that I read much of. I like my books, I guess, to have some romance in it, but I don't like that to be the main focus of my reading or my book choices. So therefore it's not a genre that I read a lot. I'm really aware of the kind of like internalized misogyny there is against like romance. But part of it probably is that, but the other part is just as a reading preference, it's not there for me. I did like this, and I did like that it was set in Scotland. Found this so funny because this book is like the perfect example of like how you can like romanticize something, and part of me is just like, maybe that's what I should start doing, romanticizing like my Scottish life and like my dating life. Reading this book is so funny because you'd be like, oh yeah, this dark brooding guy, blah blah blah. Listen, walking around in the streets of Glasgow, you're not getting this. You're not getting what's in this book. So it just made me laugh. I was like, maybe if I squint really hard or add like, you know, some rose tinted glasses to my past experiences, I could make it seem like a romance novel. That's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. But it really it did make me laugh. In terms of, you know, what this was like in terms of like romance and things like that, I liked it. There were bits out that made me laugh out loud, which I always find it's like really hard to do in books, so that I was like, okay. And in terms of like how it kind of works as a romance novel within the romance genre, it contains all the things that, you know, romance novels does. But I think what I will say, and this is like my honest opinion, because if I actually like didn't like the book or anything like that, I just wouldn't speak about it, right? Is I think it didn't contain enough of the cliches and just like annoying bits. I was like, that's so unrealistic, to make me like dislike the book. I found it a very pleasant read, and like I just found the reading experience really enjoyable. I do think she's actually a really good writer in terms of just like pacing, explaining things, and then it has all the kind of like, you know, cliches of just like the romance genre and just things being really intense, and then there are sex scenes in here which aren't cringy at all. So I was really happy about that. In terms of who and what the story is about, the story is about a main character called Jenny, and she is from LA, I believe, and comes over to Scotland because she's a stunt woman and she is performing stunts for a, I think, period drama that is happening, and she's staying in kind of like these wooden like small cabin huts, lodges. I can't remember what they called them now, but they're like kind of all the rage. And Nathan is our kind of like he's our love interest, and he like owns them, but something happens and she can't stay in her lodge, so then like obviously they are brought together by these extenuating circumstances, and loads of passion ensues, and you know, the things of like miscommunication ensues and all these sorts of things. So yeah, I honestly found this really enjoyable. It's one of those where I'm just like, I don't want people to think that I'm only saying that because she's my neighbour. I'm like, when I went into it reading it, I was like, I hope I don't hate this, because then like, what am I going to do? But if I didn't like it, honestly, I just wouldn't talk about it here. I did really enjoy this, because this is like the fourth in a series, so it doesn't follow the same character, it's just their connection is, I think, with different locations in Scotland. So I'm definitely going to read the rest. There's one coming out just in time for Christmas, like this year Christmas, so I'm definitely going to give that a read. But yeah, I would recommend. I started this today, and this is Fledgling by Octavia E. Butler. I'm only, God, 22 pages in. Already I like it so much, even though it's about vampires. I wouldn't say I dislike anything to do with vampires, I was just never into the whole hype that everyone else was into about vampires. And obviously I was never into Twilight. I remember seeing Twilight for the first time when I was at uni, and it was because a guy showed it to me, and I was just like, I've never seen this film. Like, I just was not interested in anything like supernatural. It's not really my vibe at all. But I'm glad to be reading this because I did read The Parable of the Sower, and it's just the trope is not my favourite, so I knew I wouldn't enjoy it, but so far I am liking this. I'm intrigued to see like where it goes. So yeah, I know there are a couple of other books that I have finished recently, but I can't remember them off the top of my head. But I'm so excited for another Octavia E. Butler book. I think there are a couple more that I still have to read, but next year I know I'm going to reread the Pattern List or the Pattern Master series. I can never remember what it's called, because I feel like so blessed to have had that as my first Octavia E. Butler reading experience, because it just elevated like her writing and her books for me, that anything that I read after, even if I don't like it as much, I'm still reminded of what a wonderful like and varied writer she is. And I think actually just the more I find out about her, there was like a Vice article I think about her, or I can't remember what publication it's by, but I'll link it in my description box, which is just so interesting about her and her life, her writing kind of journey and things like that. So very glad to be reading this. Guys, so I started editing that clip that you would have just seen, and yesterday or the day before, no, yesterday, and no, I had not done an intro, so thank God that was kind of my intro. But I want to talk to you about 2 books. The month of November for reading has been wonderful. Like, the books I have read, I'm just like, yes, give me more of this. Also, I didn't know this about Spotify, but Spotify caps the amount of hours that you get to listen to an audiobook. I thought it was unlimited. I was halfway through, I say halfway, I don't know, 36% of the way listening to an Agatha Christie. I think Death Comes at the End or whatever. And it just stopped, and I was like, oh, why has it stopped? Went over to my phone. How can it be like, you have reached your max? I could not believe it. And I cancelled my subscription, or it's called Everand now, because I was like, oh, I've got Spotify Premium, like, and it has audiobooks now, I don't need it. But then I did hear that Scribd actually, or Everand, did also do the same, but I just clearly never listened to enough hours on that for it to ever happen to me, because that never happened to me. So yeah, I was listening to an audiobook and now I can't listen to it until the beginning of December. But let's talk about this book. This is Fledgling by Octavia E. Butler. Chef's kiss. I love this book. I gave it 4 stars because for me 5 stars is just like when there's also like that deep emotional connection with the book where you're just like, this will break your soul, or you know, there is just something about it. But I didn't actually dislike anything in this book. It's so funny to me because listen, vampires, it's not for me. I already said it in the other clip that these kind of things are not, I don't enjoy them, right? Or largely I haven't enjoyed them until, I say now, and probably only in this bit. I really wish she was able to write, because I believe this was going to be a series. And I really wish she was able to write the rest, because this is freaking just like fantastic, writing about vampires, but still including kind of race in that. And there's the central oh my god, I'm talking about this and I just had an incident in which I was in this reading group, and it was a story about like black women and black women in domestic servitude in Ecuador, and I just had to sit in a place where someone was just like, well, I just don't see that the piece is about black women, despite it very much saying black, talking about references to Aunt Jemima and all this sort of stuff. So as I'm saying this, like, this is very much focused on race and racism in that there is someone who kills Shuri's family, and people are unsure if it's because of the fact that they have decided to like kind of breed with humans, as well as the fact that and also breed with people who are darker skin. So Shuri herself is a black vampire, and most of the vampires are white, and therefore, as it seems to be with the state of the world everywhere, when you read people that are not the default white, for some reason it's okay to kill them. Like, it's okay to want them dead. But this is fantastic. I just feel like it needs no introduction in terms of its plot. But that little bit that I gave you there is basically what it is. Shuri wakes up without her memory. Like she doesn't know what's happened to her. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know what's like happened to her family. All she knows is she wakes up in a dark cave. Ends up walking through a bit and then meets this man. Now the bit where she meets this man, his name is Wright. I think that's how you say it, right? I think that's his name anyway. I read a couple of reviews around this when I was kind of midway through this book, and one of the things a lot of people had a huge issue with is the fact that Shuri, despite being like I think she's like a 54-year-old vampire or something like that, 53, she looks like a child, and this guy picks her up and he's like completely like drawn to her, and people were just like, I cannot get on board with the paedophilia. Now I see what people are saying, but I also am just a bit like she's not a child. I absolutely get that she presents as a child, so actually on the side of the guy, his attraction to her is gross. But the only reason I'm just like, I don't find it that gross is the fact that she is a vampire and she clearly has some sort of like, they have these abilities of like scent and things, like he's clearly drawn to her because of her, I guess, like essence and her kind of subtle like coercive control, but like not in that terrible way that like I just don't think he would be drawn to like a 10-year-old child. So for me, I was like, I was able to overlook that, which I feel weird saying because I'm like, you can't overlook stuff like that. But I feel like it wasn't designed in a way to set it up so that you think this man is a paedophile. I think it was just designed to show you the way in which, despite her looking like a 53-year-old, their aging process is so much slower that she looks like a young child, because for them, she, like, that's how old she would look, but she's actually an adult. And it's just like, I don't know, it wasn't weird for me to get over. I didn't ever, Wright never gave me the ick. But so what they have is they have Shuri, who's this vampire, and like she soon kind of comes to find out about her world. She is from vampires that they call themselves Enya, and they have symbiotes who are humans, and they feed on them for blood, but not in that kind of way of just like, I'm going to destroy them. They actually all live together. It sounds very much like polyamory in the sense that they all kind of like live together. She has like multiple kind of like loves that she takes these kind of like blood from, that is to obviously not exhaust the one human, and they're all meant to like live together. Their symbiotes, as they call them, can have like partners, so they can have like romantic partners within, I guess they can have it actually externally of the family, but they usually have it within the family because the symbiotes also get the like, I guess, privilege of not aging as much as fast as regular humans, so they will outlive some of the people that they know and love in their life who are just normal humans. So the majority of the book is Shuri just trying to find out, kind of get her memory back, find out who she is, find out about her family, and find out, of course, like who is killing her and her family, or looking to like kill her and her family. So I won't spoil too much what else happens in this book, but I thought it was just brilliantly written. I just every single page I was like so excited to get back to this book and just like turn the next page and like just find out what was happening. It's just like so wonderfully paced, like such interesting conversations happening. I really loved it. It just makes me so sad that there's not another one. There was something that happened in this book that I've now forgotten, but I remember reading it thinking, this happens, oh yes, okay, so I won't say it because it's kind of, it's not a spoiler, but it's, you know, something you should read inside the book. But it also happens in her Imago series, and it is about kind of the tie between the kind of the vampire and the symbiote, which is kind of similar to the kind of ties between I think it's like the Okanali and other people. I just can't remember them now that the book has gone from my head. But yeah, I kept thinking, what does this remind me of? And I was like, oh yeah, her other book, like duh. She's just clearly borrowed the same sort of like themes from that book. So fantastic, 4 out of 5 stars, highly recommend. And then the next book I read is this book, The God of the Woods. I heard Mercedes talk about this, and I don't know why. Like, she talks about loads of books that I think sound interesting, but I don't always go on, I rarely ever go on to read them. But this sounded really interesting to me, and I don't know why. I want to go back and watch the video and see why I thought it was. But I decided to reserve it, and I'm really, really glad I read it. As I was reading it, I was like, this isn't like the kind of book, like it's the kind of book I might have read when I was younger. Like if I came across it, I would have read it. But now it's not the kind of book like I would have picked up. But I'm really, really glad I did, because I just thought it was really well done. It's told from perspectives of like multiple people across multiple timelines. But one thing I like that the author does, which I'm like, please can everyone do this? Like I think it is really, really helpful. When you are telling things from different characters' perspective, but also different time periods, is this. So for every character, there is like, you know, the different years, and she bolds them. For someone like me who just like struggles with numbers, this is the most helpful thing, because you know, mainly it will have like the character's name and then it'll be like 1966, and then it'll stick onto the other character, be like 1965, and you're just like trying to be like, what, you know. And you can, as you get into the book, like slowly pick up the pacing, but this is just so nice that you're just able to see instantly the kind of time frames you're working within and where you are with that. Like, that's it. So I was just like, thank you for this. Told in, so there's like 5 chapters or something in this, well 5 like sections, and then multiple chapters because they're told from the perspective of multiple people. And this is to do with the story of the family called, what they called, the Van Laars. One night their son goes missing from their, there's this whole backstory about like how they built their land and like yada 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 yada, and I say yada, it's all very interesting and it really adds to the story, but it's something that you should read in the book. But their son Bear goes missing. Bear is like the love of his mother's life, and she was someone who's married to her husband at like 19, so naive, all of these things. And Bear is like, you can really feel like Bear is the one thing in the world that she cherishes, that she feels like she knows about, that finally she's good at something. And at the bottom of kind of like their mansion or whatever, because it's a big sprawling estate, there's a woods and there's also a camp. And yeah, Bear goes missing one day, and there's all this kind of like weird talk about it, because it's like, why did the family wait so long to like get people involved? Why did they only conduct a full search the next day? Like all of this stuff. And then there is a present day where Bear's sister, so he now has a sister, but during the time he was alive he didn't have a sister, she's at that camp and she's gone missing. So the reason we're thrown back into the timeline of Bear is because everyone's like, what the hell is happening? And so yeah, 14 years later, their teenage daughter has gone missing in the same wilderness as her brother. Some say the 2 disappearances aren't connected, some say they are. The some say they are kind of thing is a bit like, okay, because we're in the present day with people, and you've got multiple kind of people who tell the story. So you've got like a counsellor, Louise. She is like the main counsellor there. She's been there year after year, and it's kind of telling about her involvement and kind of this other connection that she has to the family, and just, yeah, there's a lot of like sadness in Louise's life. There is also a character called Tessie Jo, except we never hear from her perspective, even in the present day, but we do hear from her dad in the past. We have a man named Carl who is, I remember what he was a gardener. You hear from him in the past, and you hear a lot from Alice, who is Bear's mother, in the kind of present day. And you can see like she's clearly someone who's had like a nervous breakdown after the like disappearance of her son, basically. Because as far as we know, Bear is like never found, and it really is just like going back and forth and finding out like what happened to Bear, and also what is happening to Barbara now, and like who's kind of like, I guess, trying to mislead the investigation and things like that. I think it's really nicely done. At the end, I felt like some things were kind of tied over a little bit, and I think there was a couple of things I was a bit like, wait, what happened in this bit? But overall, I think the author did a really, really nice way of just like really immersing you in the time period that you're in the lives of these people. You have so much sympathy for Alice, like, you know, it's crazy. Like, you have so much sympathy for some of these like rich people, because whilst, you know, they have money and all this sort of stuff, if you're a woman who is born into these things, there's such a level of just being like a caged animal. Like, this is what is expected of you. You have absolutely no freedom, no agency, and then you are blamed for not knowing the things that you don't know, because you've never been allowed to like live outside of the kind of confines people have put you in. So it's like so interesting to see women of all kind of like backgrounds in this book. I say all, not all, but you know, come from really different ways, and see how like life has really kind of backed them into this corner, and then ask more of them, despite the fact that they've never been given that chance. But yeah, there's like just so much goes on in this book. But I also thought the author, like I said, she has a really good way of immersing you in the surroundings that you're in. So all the descriptions of the camp, the woods, just things that were going on, beautiful. And I just felt like the way she moved the story along was so beautiful. There's one bit, this bit isn't like entirely beautiful, but I just thought it was a nice way of just showing you like the scene, like carrying on the scene. So it's just like such a simple bit. She says here, he extended a long arm to his right. Donna Romano tapped the gas, and the black rolled forward. I don't know why, I can just imagine that in my head, like it's just it's just like, so for me, like so seamless. He extends his hand, she taps the gas, the car moves forward, and it's just like there is no more that needed. I mean, that scene could have just like not been included. There's no more that needs to be said to convey like this is just the moving on, like the end of that section that was happening, and we're moving on to something different. But there were some really like beautiful bits of writing, and I think I pulled this one out in particular because this really touches on the kind of like love and the way that Alice saw her son Bear. And she says here, how many hours did she spend watching him? The silk of his hair, the weight of him on her chest as she dozed in the bedroom of the Albany house, or the sunroom of Self-Reliance. They called the house Self-Reliance, by the way, not Alice, but like the guy who built the house called it Self-Reliance, which is like the funniest joke, because it's like, you didn't, like, you used everyone else to build this house, but by your own self. But anyway, the warm, fragile weight of her son. She pictures his bones inside him, suspending the rest of him with their careful architecture, the miniature lungs that lifted and lowered the back, the small limbs that twitched as he settled into deep sleep. The whole infant body somehow an impossibility in its scale, in its smell, in its composition, in the way it induced a sort of calm in her that the conviction landed on her one day like an anvil she would never again feel in her life. I just loved it. There were so many just like beautiful bits of writing in here that I was like, one, I feel like you can tell the author herself is a mother. I don't know if she is, but it says she lives somewhere with her family. But just, yeah, just so many moments of really beautiful writing. So it was a book I enjoyed. I enjoyed the kind of like thriller element to it, but it didn't feel too thrilly. It really felt like a kind of like, oh, what's going to happen next? Whilst being immersed in this wonderful, beautiful writing with great pacing, with great mystery, with just everything kind of changing at the right time. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. So yeah, 2 full-star reads that I have thoroughly enjoyed. Hello guys, and welcome to the end of the November vlog. I didn't film that much of like other things I was doing in November, so there isn't that many clips. There is, I think, right now, the me talking clip, the snow clip, because we had a nice day where it just started snowing very early on in the morning, and then by like say midday it was all slush and horrible. But I actually just use this as a day to read loads of books. But for the month of November I ended up reading 6 books, which okay, that's fine. My reading just has seemed to like really slow down this year, and I can't really put my finger on it. I don't know if I'm just like, I mean, I feel like lately I've been very much distracted by other things, like spending way too much time on my phone. That's just one of the main things that I can think of, but just like other things that I've not really made time for reading. So that's one of the things. But let's look at the books. So I think what I'll do, as per usual, is put the Storygraph graphic like somewhere here so that you can see the books in a nice kind of like graphic form. But I finally finished the poetry, I say finally, it was within good time. I finished a poetry collection by Nikita Gill, and that's called, that one is called These Are the Words, which is her poems for like younger adults. And I think I spoke about this maybe in the other clip or maybe another clip, but it's just a kind of poetry collection that I did wish I had when I was younger. So I'm really glad that like this is something that she wrote for people, because I honestly, I listen to it, I read it, and I'm like, wow. So I thought it was really nice. I gave it 3 stars. The other book that I read was Love in the Scottish Fall Forest. I know 100% I talked about this, but just for a recap, I gave this 4 stars. But yeah, I'm not going to talk about it here because you would already have heard my thoughts in the previous clip. An audiobook that I finished listening to is Why Didn't They Ask Evans by Agatha Christie. Do you know something about me, which is probably a good thing for reading like crime fiction. I have seen the recent TV adaptation of Why Didn't They Ask Evans. Trying to think, God, this was probably about 2 years ago, because I feel like I was in Ghana maybe when I watched it. I'd like downloaded some of the episodes, so I kind of knew what happened, and I was still like, as I was thinking, I was like, who did it? But then I was like, I don't know, halfway through I was like, okay. I gave this 3 stars. I think it's an okay book. I think as the mystery goes, and the kind of double crossing grows and all that kind of stuff, that bit is quite clever. And I kind of like in Agatha Christie stories when people who are kind of the, I don't know, the quiet character or whatever, they just turn a bit mad at the end, you know? Because some of them are just a bit like, okay, yeah, you caught me. But some of them go proper berserk and you're just like, oh, okay. And this just had so many like different layers in terms of like who was like the mastermind behind it. But I feel like one of the things like it was quite annoying was Bobby is like our main character. I can't remember who Francis is the other character, and then Bobby has this friend. I can't remember who he is. I didn't really see the purpose of the friend until like all the business in the end. So that to me felt kind of like annoying, because it was like, okay, yes, he was kind of, we were introduced to him in the beginning, but I feel like in the beginning it didn't really make sense why he was there. It's kind of like, oh yeah, Bobby's friend, like, and he's doing like business with him. I think if she had played up that business element a little bit more, I would have felt like it was a more of a natural inclusion. But it very much was like he was the setup for the end, and then he was just like, how he kind of helped, I was like, I don't know about that. but in terms of it just being enjoyable, well paced, and just kind of all the kind of like interesting kind of thoughts that Agatha Christie has, and kind of like women, children, and just like relationships with people from two different classes. I just enjoyed all of her little musings that were told through the mouths of our characters. So now we come to like two books that I loved. So the first is Fledgling by Octavia E. Butler. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. It wasn't a 5-star read for me because I feel like 5 stars for me is pure like kind of also emotional connection to a book, but there was nothing I disliked about this book. Honestly, just found everything so interesting. Like there was never a dull moment in this book, and there was never, like, everything was just so well pieced together. Like I cannot explain it. When I read like some of her writing, I'm just like, yes, this is how you craft books. So I just found it so interesting. Every single word well used. Like I have nothing bad to say about this book. Like I just so wish she was able to continue this series, but unfortunately she passed away. But I'm just like, this would have been great. Like so good. So yes, 100% fell in love with that. Another book that I read is The God of the Woods. Again, I've talked about this, I know for a fact, but that was a 4-star read for me. I really enjoyed this. Like thrillery, but also kind of a bit of like detective-y, but also I just love the writer's description of the surroundings. Like it was so atmospheric, this book. And it just had these really 3 great things, and her writing is really nice. I know I read a bit of like something she wrote when she was talking about her son, well, one of the characters when she was talking about her son, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it. This is the kind of book that I feel as well like I would have picked up when I was a teenager and like really enjoyed. So it very much gave me a sense of nostalgia of books I kind of enjoyed then, where I just would pick the book up at random. This book I actually heard from Mercedes talking about on her channel, and there was something about it that spoke to me, but reading it I was like, I'm enjoying this reading experience because this isn't a book that I would usually pick up now, like just in terms of like what I read. But it was something nice, it was something different, and it was well written and just very interesting. The final book that I finished is called The Archaeology of Personalities, and this is I believe this is a translated book, and it's a linguistic approach to erotic rope bondage. You know, it took me probably about 4 months to read this book. I've been reading it since June, and I really feel like I got to the end and I was like, that was not worth it. It is basically about the author's kind of musings on shibari and all of those kind of things, and it just felt really pretentious. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I was just a bit like, what are you trying to say here? Like, and I think it would be fine if initially he says a lot of his initial thoughts and you're kind of like, okay, get it, but then it goes on and it goes on. It kind of just repeats the same kind of themes, and you're just like, it just feels like it's trying to be a lot smarter than it is. And yeah, so I was just like, I didn't enjoy that. It was recommended to me, but I'm just like, okay, this is clearly like something that I would never pick up. It has some very interesting themes in it, but it feels very pretentious. So those are the 6 books that I read in November. And that is it, because I know the graphic that I shows most of the main stats. I don't want to do like a breakdown of all the other stats again, so I won't do that because it just makes it long when I'm editing the video. But that is all for November, and I will see you in December, where I will upload more than just a vlog, because I definitely want to do a video talking about my kind of favourite reads for the last 6 months. I do have a video that talks about my favourite reads for the first 6 months of the year, so I'll link it down below and also up here as well. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.